Welcome to the Pet Loss Journals podcast. I am your host Louise. This podcast is all about the reality and impact pet loss has on our lives, and I will be discussing my personal journey through pet loss. So if you are struggling on your own pet loss journey, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to episode 39. I had a little siesta there for a few weeks. I was on holiday, so I was getting some well-deserved rest and recuperation and just relaxation, really, R&R, and I highly recommend it. So everyone deserves a break, a holiday, some time to get offline, to switch off, just to be present, spend time in the not so busy setting of our usual lives. So if you have missed these episodes, welcome back, and I welcome you back with open arms, of course. Yeah, so I have definitely been dying to get back recording and get this next episode out. So I know if you have followed along and you were listening, or if this is your first time listening to the podcast, I would highly advise to go back to episode 1, because that explains a lot about what this podcast is about my personal story, and what I plan to kind of talk about throughout the whole podcast. And we are approaching 1 year in this podcast, so which I cannot believe it. It's been a time that's just flown by, and I know I mentioned in a few podcasts episodes before this that how did the idea come into my head to even do this podcast, but I was washing my hair in the shower, and I still laugh at that because it's coming up to a year and I kind of feel like it's been crazy. It's been a blur. It's been scary. It's been really scary to open up, as in the last episode, that I'm an introvert, and doing something like this was never on my list of things to do. It really, really wasn't. Sharing journal entries, sharing my innermost feelings when it came to the death of my dogs, and I'm so thankful for anyone who has reached out to me via email, via social media, to say how listening to these episodes have impacted them. They've maybe helped them to feel that they're not alone in how they're feeling, and just a huge thank you to anyone who's taken the time to write me a message. It keeps me going, it keeps me recording these, and that's really what matters. So yes, I will stop there, and for this week I'm going to read a journal entry from the 1st of August 2022, and I'll jump right in. 2 weeks ago, on the 16th of July 2022, I cycled and completed the 120 kilometre Ring of Clare cycle. I wanted to write about it as it was such a huge moment in my life. I completed it 3 years ago too, but this time my 2 friends couldn't make it, so I cycled it on my own. Obviously there was a couple of 100 people there, but on my own, as in I didn't know anybody else doing it. Steve was driving the route, helping me along the way. I wouldn't have been able to finish it without his support. I really noticed how fit I was, and all the training had paid off. I felt like the dogs were in it with me too, keeping me going all along the way. I think that day for me was so magical because it proved the saying, you can do anything you put your mind to. It's a day I will look back as a day to lock into my memory. That is this week's journal entry. It's short and sweet, but it it is really important to kind of highlight these moments in your life, even though you're in the middle of deep grief. I just want to clarify, I am not an athlete or an extremely fit person. I had a spinning bike at home and I did some training on that several months before this cycle that I speak about here. And I'm a leisure cyclist. I'm not in a cycling club or anything like that. So I just do this for leisure, really. And that's the thing that when I did this cycle, it was the first big cycle I did without my dogs being in my life. And so I kind of found myself asking them along the way for support and strength and to keep me going. And when I felt like I wanted to give up, or when I felt like I couldn't breathe, and going up a really big mountainous hill, I just kept kind of connecting in with them as such and asking them for strength to keep me going. And I really, really felt like they were in it with me, like I say in the journal entry. I just thought of them a lot, because when you're cycling, and especially if you're not in a group and you're cycling on your own for many hours, which I did, you get to do a lot of thinking in between trying to keep your breathing regulated. But it's definitely like walking and cycling. Those are the things that give me time to think about my life, what's happened in the past, my grief, my dogs, anything that I've struggled with. And while I'm doing such a physical exercise, it's amazing what the body can do. And I never thought that I would be able to do something like that, to be honest with you, because I was never into, like, long distance sports or anything like that. So this was like a little personal achievement for me. And sometimes when we're deep in grief and we want to try and do something and commit to doing something such as this, like a sport or a trip or something like this, it can be really difficult to kind of say, and I'm never going to be able to do that, I'm not in the right mindset. But you can surprise yourself by doing something like this. And by me kind of tapping into that relationship with my dogs while I was doing this extreme, strenuous exercise, this cycle for hours, it really helped me to put things into perspective, kind of evaluate where I've come since October 2019 when they died until that very day, the 1st of August 22. It was a real struggle, but it's just, it proved to myself that I said I wanted to do this cycle, and you can do anything you put your mind to, even if there's other stuff going on in your life. So I'm gently saying that I think that it's good to still have goals and have these achievements that you want to get to, or a lot of things go on the back burner when we experience loss, which is totally fine and totally normal. And because I was this far into the journey and I had kind of, gotten some support and everything, and I was processing things. I was beginning to really process things at this stage. It was really helpful for me to kind of have that focus on this goal that I wanted to achieve, and not in a competitive way, but in like just that personal way that I really feel that I'd like to do this, even if there's no one else, friends by my side to do it. It's something that I want to prove to myself that I can do this alone amongst hundreds of people that I don't know. I still felt alone But it was a good alone. I mean, I am an introvert and I like my own company, but this was something totally different. It was a challenge, and it was a mental and physical challenge, because your mind can tell you can't do this. Just give up. You're too engrossed in your grief, Louise. You're not able for this. You don't have the mental capacity or strength to do something like this. And that was by me challenging those narratives. And some of you might relate to this, that I feel once you experience loss, your narrative and your self-talk kind of plummets down, and even your self-worth kind of plummets, especially if you're, around people who don't understand, don't offer support, and that you just are struggling to find your way back to you, even though you'll never quite be the same as you were when you had your pets in your life. So it's trying to navigate and be comfortable with this new you without your pet, and that's devastating. But there's no way to get back to that original you, because you have to form a new relationship nearly with yourself. That's definitely how I felt. And I think some people might say, oh, it's kind of silly to kind of be talking to them or ask them for help. And I was like, well, a lot of people, when humans die in people's lives, they often kind of whisper to them or talk to them or wonder if they're around, guiding them. It's no different to do that in relation to the pets that have died in our lives. And if it helps support you, if it helps you feel connected and keep that spiritual relationship alive, then so what? Like, go ahead and do it. That's the kind of mentality I have around this kind of thing. And who cares? Like, I don't care who hears me say this. This is my experience, and whatever is unique to you, that is your experience. So what I'm saying here is to keep that connection alive with your pet. Whether you're doing an exam, whether you are doing a big cycle like that, whether you're going on a trip, a solo trip, traveling, or your pet can still be part of your life, and you can still ask for that love, ask for that healing, that guidance from your pet. And I just know that it's helped me. Maybe it's something that you could try. Maybe just to open your heart a little about that and do it once on a daily basis. Ask your pet one thing, or to be there for you, or to guide you in a certain situation, or to protect you while you're traveling to whatever location you're traveling to. Or if you have a job interview, ask them to be with you and give you some guidance, some good luck. I just think that kind of thing, keeping it alive, is really subtle, but it's really powerful at the same time, if that makes sense. I just definitely feel like when I do those things, like when I mentioned that on the anniversaries, to kind of celebrate when I go up and I climb that mountain in memory of my dogs, that I definitely feel that same kind of feeling that I described for this cycle, that I'm connecting to them, that I kind of feel that they're with me. And the same, in the exact same way as when I see a little robin, a bird outside, and I just have this like gut feeling, this intuition that that's one of them, especially if I see two together. I definitely kind of feel that, hi guys, that they're around, that they're still showing me that they're here, maybe like giving me a message that I'm on the right path in life. And don't get me wrong, I have had a really, really tough 12 months in my personal life, not in business life at all. But I've had many challenges behind the scenes, and it's always those little signs that kind of show up in front of me just to nearly break that negative thought pattern, and that little robin appears just when I'm spiraling from whatever is going on in my life that is overwhelming me or causing me anxiety or sadness. And then when I see that robin, it nearly breaks that pattern. It nearly interrupt is the good word. It interrupts that negative thought pattern and brings me back to say, we're here with you, Louise. Please don't forget that. Utilize the energy that they're offering by showing me these signs that they're still here, and keeping me going, because so many of us are going through grief, and then something else happens. And like I talk about in the earlier podcasts about the multiple losses that can happen, it's like an avalanche of losses that can sometimes happen. And I don't know, was it just me that happened? I had experienced 3 huge losses in 2019. Well, 4, when I think of the 2 dogs. It's not just one loss, it's 2 losses and another 2 losses as well. So 4 losses in 2019. And I don't know, has that happened to anybody else? Those avalanche of multiple losses together, and it can wipe you out. And then it takes so much time to process each individual loss, to give it that time to feel the different emotions attached to those individual losses. Like one particular loss, I remember feeling just complete anger over, and processing anger is difficult. And then another loss was just a lot of self-worth, like that just diminished. And obviously with my partner, and there was cheating going on there, so there was a lot of that. I had to build myself up I have to form a new version of myself. So there was multiple losses, and then when my dogs died, that those losses overtook the others, and the others were sidelined. So we just have to be so compassionate with ourselves. And if you are experiencing the death of your pet, or anticipating the death of your pet, and other losses have impacted your life around the same time, I'm so sorry that has happened, and it's devastating. And I don't know why that it happens that way. I really don't. But I want you to know that if any of these episodes are helpful for you when you're feeling alone in that grief, I hope that it gives you a sense of that you're not floating around in this abyss of pain and not understanding what it's about, and nobody ever telling you what grief was supposed to feel like, and that this particular grief is so different to any other form of loss that you've experienced, and that is really, really common. I want you to know, because a lot of people get shocked and surprised and overwhelmed at the fact that the grief they feel from the death of their pet has been a lot more painful and devastating than a family member or a human in their life, and they find it hard to contemplate why that is. And they also find it difficult to realise that grief comes in different forms, different feelings, different intensities, different levels, and that can be really difficult because we have different connections with people and we have stronger bonds with pets than sometimes people, and this is something that can be very hard for people to come to terms with and to understand, like. And I just want you to know that it's okay to have those kind of questions and feel confused and kind of maybe overwhelmed by it, and it's really okay to feel that way, because if you've never experienced it before, I mean, what have we to go on as such? And I experienced grief from a grandparent, and I think when I was a lot younger, and I remember just feeling sad for a couple of days and then feeling fine. And I was like, oh, well, this is what grief is. You just feel sad for a couple of days and that's fine. But then what I felt when my dogs passed away was nothing similar to that feeling. But it's important to note here that the relationship that I had with my grandparent was not a close relationship. That's my perspective of it. So I definitely feel that I had to kind of explain to myself that relationship really wasn't a very impactful, strong, close relationship in your life, Louise. So we can't compare, and we automatically try to compare, and they're not in the same category. The death of my dogs are not in the same category as my grandparents that died when I was younger, and that's okay. It's okay. And the fact that I experienced grief in my opinion, for the first time was when I was in my 30s in 2019, and all of my other grandparents besides that grandparent I mentioned had died before I was born. So I didn't experience much death when I was younger. I experienced death of other pets. Yes, I definitely did. I experienced the death of my pony when I was 17 years old, which was really, really difficult. And other family dogs, but I just didn't have that connection with the other pets than I did. I think when you live with, they were outdoor dogs, of course. I grew up on a farm, as I mentioned, but when you start to live with an animal, be that a cat, a dog, and they live in your house, I think it's completely different. It adds a new layer of connection. It adds a new layer to that relationship where you're gazing into each other's eyes a lot with your pet. You're forming a really deep bond together when you're living together. You're seeing each other when you wake up the first thing in the morning and going to sleep, and it's like having a partner, or living with a partner, and it's forming a connection like that, only it's a non-verbal connection, you know what I mean? And people are like, oh, dogs can't understand you, and sometimes I'm like, yes, they can. Just because they're non-verbal, wow, can we communicate with our animals in so many other ways. But yes, I hope that this episode has been kind of reminds you of maybe a time in your life that your pet has helped you through a goal or something that you set your mind to, or maybe it might give you an idea that you've been putting off an achievement that you want to do, or a goal, and you feel that you've just kind of put that off, but that you know that you can have the memory and you can have the energy, the spiritual connection with your pet in whatever that you choose to do or set your mind to in your life. And that could mean and look like anything. It doesn't have to be a big cycle, but it can be a small goal, it can be a career goal, it can be a goal to get out and make new friends, it can be a goal to change location, or anything that you feel is relevant to you in your life right now. I want to gently say to you that your whole life does not have to stand still just because your pet has left this earth. And I say that really gently to you. I'm not saying that you have to go off and keep yourself busy or distract yourself, because you know that that's not something that I agree with or believe in. But when you're ready to begin to get moving again in life, and it's okay to stand still for whatever amount of time that you feel you need to do that deep grieving, that crying, that processing, getting support, speaking to professionals, joining support groups, whatever that looks like for you. That's okay, but I want you to know that your life does not have to stand still forever, because you can carry that relationship that you had with your pet through with you in your heart, or wherever you feel that your pet is with you. You can carry that relationship with you. You can connect that relationship with you through the goals and achievements that you want in your life, that you may have put on hold, or that you may have been thinking about. I just hope that brings you some peace today. I'm really, really grateful that you have listened, and if you are a regular listener to this podcast, a huge thank you. And if you are a Patreon member, even bigger thank you. It's been really special to release Patreon episodes now every second week, and then these episodes every second week. So it's been amazing, and it's great to read the comments in Patreon as well from the episodes. Last week, a reminder, I spoke about in depth, actually, in really, really large detail, about how pet loss grief manifests in our bodies. So, and I speak personally about my own physical responses to the death of my dogs, and I really go in depth into that. And if anyone is experiencing a lot of physical symptoms, or they're feeling ill, that episode is going to be right up your street to try and get some newfound knowledge and some support during that time that you're experiencing. So head on over to Patreon. It's linked in the show notes anyway, if you want to have a listen to that latest episode from last week. But before I finish this episode today, I have a sneak peek of news that I'm going to be sharing in the next couple of weeks. Probably by the time I release the next episode, which is due for release on the 5th of July, and I will have even more news. But I've been working really hard in the background with Michelle, who is part of the Light After Loss team, and with a website developer, and I have been coming up with some new ideas of how to offer more and more resources to clients, to listeners of this podcast. And I realise that a lot of people listening are in different time zones around the world, which is incredible. And sometimes it can be a big struggle for clients to try and navigate the time zone. As I'm in Ireland, trying to get a one-to-one session with me is difficult with the time zones. So I have created several new offerings that are going to cater for that particular issue, basically, and will give you access to the support that is greatly needed. I will be sharing more on this in the next episode, but if this interests you, and I don't want to give away everything now, I really don't, but it is something that is going to be available, several things going to be available on my website, which is going to be in the next 2 to 3 weeks, available for all clients all around the world that can access more resources, more support. So I hope that that's going to be of help. If you want to be the first to kind of hear about this or hear more detail of these extra offerings that I will be making available soon, do please get onto the mailing list, and I will actually drop that into the show notes, and that a link for you to join the mailing list. So that would be the best place to find out where it all is going to happen. So thank you for coming along, listening this week, and take care. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this week's episode. Remember, your pet loss grief is real, and it is so valid. Please be gentle on yourself. Until next time, take care.